Have you ever started a business with a significant other, a spouse, a partner, and then for it to go wrong? Well, today's episode on the Silicon Springbok podcast, we chat to Gill Taylor, who's built some amazing fashion brands. And she's gone through some really, really powerful experiences, difficult experiences that has made her into the entrepreneur she is today. On the Silicon Springbok podcast, we focus on entrepreneurs who have built themselves into wonderful entrepreneurs, not despite the challenges they've gone through, but because of them. My name is Don Pitot. I'm the founder of Joyforge Labs, and this is the episode with Gill Taylor. Welcome, Gill, to the Silicon Springbok podcast. I'm really excited to learn about your story today and the struggles and battles and successes that you've been through. And obviously know some about it, and we want to share this today with the listeners. But let's start with what you're doing now. It's really interesting. I've had a look. You're doing some kind of really high-end brand for dogs. Feels for me it's like the Hermes or LMVH or something like that of dogs, but you're doing some really interesting things in that space. Tell us about it.
Cool. Thanks, Dom. So yeah, I've launched a high-end brand for dogs, manufacturing a whole range of lifestyle items that you would need. So my goal is to become a one-stop shop for dogs, but everything high-end, designed in a way that makes user-friendly for dogs and owners moving around the city, and really kind of ties in our relationship with dogs and how modern our relationship with dogs has become. And no one's really focusing on that. So that's the idea behind the brand. And I'm manufacturing everything in Cape Town with the plans of exporting globally and building a global brand with it.
So tell me a bit about what does that mean, like integrating dogs into your life. I grew up on a farm with loads of dogs, but I've never really had dogs in an urban context, and I do understand it's probably there's a lot of things that we do with dogs these days we'd never used to do.
Yeah, so I think the lifestyle we share with dogs has changed drastically. Back in the day, dogs used to be outside dogs. We used to feed them once a day. Now dogs really have become everyone's favorite member of the family, and they need to be treated that way. And there's not really beautiful items that cater for this market yet. Especially my target market is people, empty nesters whose kids have left the home, or millennials who have opted not to have children or have delayed having children. So they have disposable income to spend on their dogs that they see as family. And they also want things that complement their design aesthetic and complement their home aesthetic. So that's my target market that I'm targeting with this new brand.
Okay, but give me an example of one. Like I think you made something like a dog basket. I've seen it on
Carrier,
your website.
Yes.
Okay, carrier.
So my top selling product is a car seat that becomes a carrier that becomes a bed. So I have a design patent for it. It took us 2 years to make. And the whole concept is for small to medium-sized dogs that move around the city with their owners. So the idea is you strap the car seat into the car. The dog sits in the car seat. You can attach the dog to the seat belt for safety requirements, and also so they don't drive around and distract the driver. Then when you get to a coffee shop where you're planning on doing some work, you can carry the dog in the carrier to the coffee shop and attach it to a chair so they can sit at the table with you without restaurant owners getting upset about dogs being on furniture. And then if you plan to go away for a weekend or you end up staying at a friend's house for the night, you can take that car seat into the house and unclip all four sides and it becomes a flat dog bed. So really thinking about that, the whole movement of your dog with you all at all times.
But you're also thinking about its looks, right? These are not just functional items. This is also a bit more like an accessory, right? Where if I have one of these, it looks like a beautiful item. So it's. I think what's really interesting is combining functionality with like a layer of creativity. And is that part of what differentiates Petite French?
100%. So we also, our market really cares about what their dogs look like. They are essentially an extension of themselves. So we are creating and designing products that really complement people's style. A lot of dog products in the market are quite ugly, to say the least. So we're trying to add that like proper design element to the stuff, and also make it functional, and also make it comfortable with for the dogs.
And is that why you manufacture, in Cape Town? Is it? I can imagine. Obviously, there is cost advantages to manufacturing in China at scale. But what is it about manufacturing locally that supports your brand?
So I believe that Cape Town and South Africa has such incredible skills when it comes to craftsmanship and creating like beautiful products, and the creative side of that as well. There's obviously huge benefits in manufacturing in South Africa in rands and being able to export and sell in dollars or pounds abroad. And we also obviously have all the different trade agreements with various countries to export duty and tax free. So there's a massive advantage. We're also able to manufacture small quantities here. So as a small brand, I'm able to try out different things, test them, make some small quantities. And the plan is then to kind of do that as long as I can and start exporting while doing so. But obviously there is going to be a tipping point where the manufacturers here just can't do the quantities that I require. And obviously if that's the case, then I'll start looking abroad for other manufacturers. But for now, there's a benefit to it. And I do believe in it.
Now, this is not your first rodeo in terms of making this type of product, but so I'm well aware that previously you were part of growing Shoo Shoos in South Africa. Let's get a little bit into that. But first, I have a lot of personal love for the Shoo Shoos brand. I mean, my kids, my son is 8 and my daughter's 6, so they're kind of out of those sizes, I think. But really, as toddlers, that's all they wore. We just bought Shoo Shoes, every single type for them, and they were great looking shoes, really, really well suited to kids of that age, and look good, and were not too expensive. You could go and buy like some Nike or Adidas shoe, which wasn't really anyway that comfortable for them. But Shoo Shoes was, like, for me, such an incredible brand or market positioning. It's just like, well, that's the only thing we're going to buy. Why buy anything else? So that's my personal experience of it. But I'm sure behind the facade, not so easy to do all of that. So let's go back to the beginning. Tell us about the Shoo Shoes story, how you got into it, and what were some of the challenges along the way.
Cool, yeah. So I was at a NASPA startup. I actually started as a buyer at the Vashini Group and hated corporate. I just hated being put into a box. And didn't last there very long. And I ended up heading over to a NASPA startup in the kids industry, baby industry. I was heading up their buying and their sourcing, and came across a brand called Shoo Shoos. Absolutely fell in love with the product, and just felt like with a bit of love and the correct branding and a bit of time and effort, it could be something really special. So my fiance and I at the time were looking for something to do together. We were both business minded and had that entrepreneurial mindset. So we originally approached the owners to possibly distribute the brand for them abroad. And 2 meetings ended up in us agreeing to do a due diligence to buy the company. So we bought the business together and took it over in 2016. So that's how we got into it.
Okay, so you guys took it over, and then it was just easy from there, like international expansion, brands, and so forth. But tell me a little bit about, so what are the main problems in a business like that when you're taking it over in the beginning? What were the first things that you guys really had to solve?
Yeah, so I think obviously so exciting when you buy your first business. So much like excitement and giddiness, and I think the first day we walked into the factory was just difficult and challenges from day one. I think just off the get-go, we took over the company, walked into the warehouse, opened up our emails, and found that we'd lost our biggest distributor. So that was day one. And I think then what also ended up happening very early on was we realized that the amount of shoes that we were told in the due diligence the factory was producing every month was not nearly possible. So that threw all of our costings out, that threw everything out. So it was quite tough from day one. And then I think we did a rebrand. We the range hadn't been updated in about 14 years, just running the same shoes. So we decided to immediately do ranges, seasonal ranges, develop new lab-colored leathers. We introduced seasons. So we introduced winter and summer, which they'd never done before. So sandals in summer and boots in winter, which was amazing. It took off. We had distributors abroad that we managed to bring on board. And then the challenge of that was actually being young and inexperienced, keeping the distributors in check with boundaries. One of the issues that happened was each distributor from a different region liked specific shoes from a specific range. So we just kept them running because they just wanted to reorder those. And I think in the end, we ended up with such a wide range of SKUs and products. And it was incredibly difficult to manage, we were just keeping such a huge leather stock room with all the colors in case they reordered, replens. So that was one of the challenges. Some of the exciting things was we built the factory up to 50 staff, all the exporting, the rebrand that we did was amazing and very well received. Our positioning was done really well. And I managed to negotiate a deal with Disney, which was one of the highlights of my career. But that came with all of its own set of challenges. One of them was we had to commit to royalties for an entire year of what we estimated the sales to be, with a minimum, of course. So that was a massive cash flow suck. And then we were only able to access the design files from day one of our contract starting. So got the design files day one, designed our shoes how we always do, and tried to submit them. And they were just like, no, there's absolutely no way. It was like skew Mickeys, hand cut and not accepted at all. So we then had to go back to the drawing board and ended up having to bring in a very expensive laser cutting machine from abroad. So that took a month and a half to get here. So that was a month and a half out of our year's contract of sales that just got lost. And then we brought in the laser machine, and also just more challenge being thrown on top of this. We actually had a break-in at our factory in Ottery shortly after buying the laser machine, and the guys decided to knock the sink off of the wall and flood the place, and we nearly lost the laser machine that we just brought in. So that came with a lot of challenges, and it was also a big learning curve. It's all nice and well to do these massive deals and agreements, but at the end of the day, when you're a small business, there's so much red tape to try and get around that just ends up, killing the deal. So that was one of the lessons and challenges with Shoo Shoos. Another really big, exciting moment that happened for us was we managed to sign Bye Bye Baby in the US as a retailer. And I mean, they're absolutely massive. They have about as many stores in one state as Toys R Us has in the whole of South Africa. So it was a really, really big deal. And after a lot of red tape and signing up, we ended up having to walk away from the deal because we couldn't afford the insurance needed to cover ourselves under the children and baby liability in the US that was needed for the order. So another thing, you think as a South African business or small brand, like let's go for it. Let's sign these deals, and then you do, and they just can't happen because we're too small.
Now I'm just let this go into one of those moments. I'm sure there was times where you were, I don't know, maybe at the factory and had to like go into a room to scream. Tell us a bit of like, what is it like personally? Because it's we all know that these are real challenges. Cash flow. You just said, like, you sign a big deal, everything's wonderful, great. We're going to make so much money. I'm sure the staff is all excited. Everybody's excited, and then then you realize, we can't start the work until the first day, and then we got to pay millions out up front, taking on huge amounts of risk, all that pressure on top of you, and then something like, okay, well, now we still need to buy a laser machine, and like you begin to question your own ability. Other people start to question your ability. You certainly don't have the track record to like show them, no, don't worry, I've built 10 businesses before. This is kind of your first go at it. Yeah. Were there moments where you were just like, what am I doing? Like,
100%.
am I insane?
Yeah. I think, in the beginning, you really trust that it's all going to work out, and you take advice from people and you kind of just go with it. And I think the harder it gets and the more blows you get given, the more you start with self-doubt and the imposter syndrome and the I don't have a clue what I'm doing, and this is going to fail and this is going to work. And yeah, so there was a lot of that. I think in the beginning when we took over the business, I was energized and working weekends and working late hours and just pouring my heart and soul into it. And then I actually got burnout with my time at Shoo Shoos. It did reach a point where I couldn't get out of bed for 6 months. I got so sick from burnout. And also, I mean, it was bad. I thought I was dying at one stage. I didn't know what was going on. And it took 10 different doctors before I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called Graves' disease. And yeah, I think I did learn a very hard lesson as well, in that you can't just work all the time. There has to be a little bit of a balance. But when it's your baby and you really want it to succeed, you put everything you have into it until your body decides it's done. So yeah, so that was it was very difficult. And also I was running the company with my fiance, who I ended up marrying, and yeah, it took its toll on our relationship as well. We were working together, and the relationship ended up just being work. So when things got bad, there's only one person you're going to get cross with about it, and yeah, so it was very challenging, and I definitely had my dark days.
Yeah, and so it did come to a point where you decided, like, no more. You've shared a little bit there, and then just take us into that moment, that day that kind of decided I can't carry on.
So we bought the business in 2016, and I think it took 2 or 3 years for me to get really sick. And our relationship with so 2 years into running the business, we got married, and we were married for a year. And then it just kind of the wheels started coming off. And I got really sick and kind of tied everything together. It was too stressful. The business was really difficult. And yeah, we ended up getting divorced, and once again put the business first ahead of our relationship, and decided to continue running the company together for another 4 years after that. There was also
it's amazing, unbelievable, and wow. Okay.
Yeah, there was lots of me locking myself in the bathroom, crying on the bathroom floor without the staff knowing. But we did, we decided that we wanted to put the business first after the divorce. So for a long period of time, we decided not to tell the staff and just continue, because we didn't want to rock the boat at work. And then, yeah, this continued for a little while. COVID hit as well. So it was during the COVID time. So you can also imagine the challenges of that, with 50 staff, cash flow, COVID, the uncertainty of everything. And yeah, the plan was actually, I met someone new, and the plan ended up being, just for the sake of us and the company's success, the plan was for myself and my new partner to move to the States, to LA. We had an American LLC set up, and we were growing really nicely, and I was there 4 times a year, and I was absolutely loving it. So I decided that would be my way forward. I would move over that side, and I'd run the American company, and he would stay here and run the South African company. And then COVID hit, and we lost so many distributors abroad. Cash flow took a knock, and I was really being put under a lot of pressure to move immediately. And that came with its own complications, where my partner could only get a work permit from day one of us arriving there, and then only 3 months after that could he start looking for a job. And I was also given a deadline. I think they said to me, you can have 2 months salary, and then whatever you bring in is what you've got. So I was feeling the the pinch of it a lot and just really uncertain, and it just didn't feel right. So I went through to lunch to meet actually not my business partner. I actually went to go meet his dad. And yeah, we were sitting across the table and I was just feeling a lot of pressure. And I think with my body being sick, I started to realize also the more I traveled and the more I came home to the office, the more I realized like this doesn't feel so good. Like there's something my body is not happy about here. Yeah, so we had a brief discussion about what our plans were to leave, and I think everything just built up, and I ended up resigning without thinking the words before that. Kind of just came out of my mouth and decided I was done and I couldn't do it anymore.
Wow. So you went into that restaurant to talk about the future and walked out, and it was over. You're like,
100%.
yeah, I'm out. And if you reflect on that, do you think you made the right decision, the right call?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think as soon as I got out of the company, my body started healing. I wasn't on medication anymore. I wasn't sick anymore. So I know it was definitely the right idea. And I think Shoo Shoos for me was, that brand was my like heart and soul. I poured everything into it. And as soon as I started getting restricted on like, you can't do this, or that's not a good idea, or we don't agree with that, then my creativity outlet just got taken away from me. And that was kind of my love for the brand. I just felt like I didn't agree with the strategy anymore. I didn't agree with where the company was going. So it was definitely the right decision.
And I think this is what a lot of founders struggle with, is that the things they love about their business when they were first like developing the concept, it's not what's needed later on to make the business grow and scale. Like it becomes all about sales. It becomes all about efficiencies. It becomes about cash flow management and, talking to funders and investors and reporting and all those things are really important, but they're not what drove you in the beginning to do it. And you find it like the percentage of time that you are working on the part of the business which you love, it's smaller and smaller and smaller because it's not as important anymore. Like the thing that makes the business initially, viable, the idea, the creativity, is kind of not valued. Is that how it kind of felt? Like there was a successful branding change and new products and so forth, and then you get into this rhythm. Does the value of what you did to get it to be successful, do people still see it that way, or how does that value perception change?
I mean, I think the brand it has such strong brand equity, and I think it's going to stand like that for a very long time. But I think what always happens in any company is the fun stuff goes away when there's no, when you lose a big distributor, there's no money for the fun stuff. And then when your creativity gets taken away and you're just doing the mundane day-to-day stuff all the time. Also, some things that I just wasn't good at, I was trying so hard to do when I actually just should have outsourced them or asked for help. Instead, I would, something that would take someone else quick to do, I was spending so much time doing it. It was just draining my energy and I wasn't getting it right. So then I go down the hole of like, well, I'm failing at this. And meanwhile, there's just some things as an entrepreneur that you need to learn to outsource that you can't do yourself, or you don't have the skills to do, or your time's better suited elsewhere. So I think there was a lot of that was learned as well.
Yeah, you're quite right. Like, but in the beginning, right at the start, you don't have the money or even enough work for like a full-time CFO, a full-time operations manager, a full-time sales manager. And often if you transition to those too early, your costs in your business go up, so overheads are too high, and you struggle then to stay afloat. That's real. No money in the bank, no business. Like, doesn't matter how much creativity you want. Like, you're looking at that number on the bank account before salaries have to pay it every month. Like the 20th, the 21st, like chasing, customers, please pay, because I got a fund payroll on the 23rd. It goes out on the 24th to the thing, and then on the 25th everybody gets paid, and then you breathe a sigh of relief. Thank God, I made payroll this month. Like when you're in that mode, I've been there. It's so hard to think then, you know what I need to do is outsource and pay more
Hmm.
money to other people to take some of the load. And
And
that
it's
is
also really
incredibly
hard.
difficult to know when's the right time.
I think another thing that we found hard in that situation when you're in it and you're just looking at the day to day was we didn't step back and just we kept doing a strategy and not sticking to it or not committing
Mm.
to it because we wouldn't see results within the first month and then we'd immediately chuck it out and go to the next thing instead of giving anything enough time to really set into motion and work.
So now you're unemployed, fun employed after you've left Shoo Shoos. What do you do then? Like it's a common problem for entrepreneurs. You leave one thing. Now you have the question, okay, do I go back and get a job? Do I start something new? What was your process and your thinking in that period?
So while I was at Shoo Shoes for a number of years, I had the idea for making something in the pet industry. My idea was actually leather collars because we were dealing with so much beautiful leather. I just saw, my creative mind was just like, oh, I can make amazing collars and leaves from this. And that was something that I put a business plan together for, and it was kind of parked on my desk for about 4 or 5 years. And when I resigned, I decided now's the time. I really want to do this. Every time I saw another brand launching something in the industry, I got that like sick feeling in my stomach, like, oh, I want to be doing this, and I could be doing it better than them. Um, so I decided to take every little last bit of savings that I have and put it into a new brand, which is what I did. And I was very energized. I was very excited to launch this new thing. So for the first year, I just worked on product and the brand and the website and getting everything live. Um, and it's been just over 2 years that I've been running it. But year one was amazing, energized, loving it, passionate about it. And then year two came with some serious challenges and self-doubt and imposter syndrome and failure. And then I started thinking, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. It's been a long time since I've made any money. All my friends are further ahead and they're all climbing the corporate ladder, and I'm falling behind. And then a lot of the self-doubt came, and then I reached a point where I was ready to give up and decided, let me update my CV and start looking for jobs. And then I very quickly realized that as an entrepreneur, you're not hireable. You have a lot of skills and so many different things, but I realized how unemployable I was. And then I really dug deep on like, what is it that I want to do? I went back to like childhood passions and what I'm good at and what energizes me, and actually decided at the end of last year that this Petite French brand is what I want to be doing. So then I recommitted, and since recommitting, it's just been amazing how much is happening and how exciting it all is again.
I want to ask a little bit because now you've done a lot of these things,
Hmm.
and then some people would look at you and go, "Oh, well, you probably had wealthy parents. You probably had parents who were entrepreneurial, or like went to the best schools and everything." And as far as I understand, you've also not had the easiest time getting into this, and what kind of support systems you've had around you. So, just tell me a little bit about like what you had to support to in this
Hmm.
process, and then what you've built and developed to help you over time.
I actually grew up with a very sick mum, and she died when I was 19, which obviously also added to the autoimmune and the stress of that. And my dad also has MS, so he's been very sick for the last 10 years. So, quite a difficult thing I'm navigating on that side. And then I did have my ex's dad, my ex father-in-law, was an amazing entrepreneur, and he really did cultivate the entrepreneurship in me and mentor me from a young age. And he was amazing up until the point that my relationship with my ex started getting rocky. He was actually like a dad to me from the age of 11, and I grew up in their home on weekends. Our brothers were best friends. Our mums went to school together, so it was a very close knit family. Um, and then, unfortunately, when it came to my divorce with my ex, I didn't divorce my ex, I ended up divorcing his dad. We had lunch at Saruga at the waterfront, and we ordered sushi, and I couldn't get the piece of sushi down because my mouth was so dry. But yeah, so it was through him that I got divorced, and it was also through him that I ended up resigning from Shoo Shoos. So incredibly difficult. And I also was young, and yeah, I didn't have anyone I could phone to for advice, or I was I was doing these big negotiations on my own with very little support. Um, and then as soon as I started my new company and had an investor come on board, I actually never heard from my ex-father-in-law again. I think him and his wife just cut ties with me. Blood is thicker than water, and I understand that. But yeah, it was a massive loss for me. So I think it was just on top of running the business and going through the divorce. I felt very alone going through all of this. Um, and yeah, I think I'm in a much better situation now with Petite French, because as I mentioned to you, I just really rely on a network, and I've built like such an amazing community around me and mentors around me. And there's some key people in my life that have kind of held my hand through this journey with Petite French now, and I can phone and ask, what the hell am I doing here? Or like, I don't know what I'm doing here, or please, can you introduce me to this person, or how do I do this? And yeah, it's been a very different kind of situation now. Yeah, so that was my story of like, hasn't been an easy, here's all the money in the world and you can do with it what you want. I think I can tell you stories about last year selling things on Facebook Marketplace to fund my samples for my business. We also started renting out a room in our house on Airbnb until Body Corporate caught us. But yeah, that was a nice little chunk that could go into my business and keep it running for another year. So I've just, you hustle and like you bootstrap, and it's difficult. There are like these sleepless nights where I don't know how I'm going to pay for stuff. But I think that's also been a huge growth for me, is that last year I was kind of self-doubting. I don't know how this is going to go or where it's going to go. Whereas now I'm like, this is going to work. I'm briefing stuff that I don't have cash for yet, but I know I'm going to find it. Busy raising investment now. And yeah, I believe in it. I know it's going to happen. And yeah, it'll all kind of work out the way it's supposed to, really.
I think that loneliness is the hardest part of being an entrepreneur. Like nobody really knows the details. On the outside, you're presenting a picture of confidence, success, because you need to convince a whole lot of people to go on this journey with you. So it's important to do that. You can't go out every day and go, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. Everybody will just run away. They look at you like you must have it together, and you don't inside. Like on the external, you've got to present that picture of confidence. And I think you can still be vulnerable to some degree, but really as a leader, you can't be daily, breaking down in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
You need to help them see the future and present the future in a realistic but positive way. And I normally ask the question, like you've already pretty much answered it, which is, why didn't, did you want to give up? You certainly have had that multiple times, but maybe just reflect on why. Why haven't you given up?
Sure. I mean, I definitely secretly love the challenges.
Mm-hmm.
I think, obviously just for this podcast as well, I did a lot of reflection of like, I'm not hireable, but flip the amount of stuff that I've managed to get right in the last year. I think one of the things to mention that was one of the reasons why I wanted to give up last year was I got I got an investor involved. I pitched to someone and he was keen and he was in and he committed a certain amount of money, paid over 4 tranches at the beginning of last year. And, it's all romance when you get an investor on board. I was naive to it. I had a lawyer advising me who said, you got a plan for the divorce. You should know this. And yeah, it was just, he's South African, but he doesn't have a company or residency in South Africa. And he paid the money from a business he has abroad. And the Reserve Bank just held the money up I couldn't, the money was paid 3 months late. So I missed all my deadlines for factories and seasons and all of that. That went all went out the window. And then I tried to get the money released, and the Reserve Bank just wouldn't release it. And I was on the phone with them every day for 2 months trying to get the money released. And yeah, eventually got it out. And it was just, I had no boundaries in place. I kind of let the relationship with my investor become more friendship and less business. And I ended up becoming the emotional place for him to dump all of his personal stuff going on. And very quickly, things just like got out of control. He refused to sign the paperwork for me to issue the shares, but he was also refusing to put the next tranche of money in. So I was stuck with my hands behind my back, unable to go look for other investors, but also not able to move forward. I had bills that I needed to pay. I didn't have the cash flow to do it. So all of a sudden, like the fun and the creativity that we're talking about right in the beginning, like there was none of that. There was just the stress of like not sleeping and how am I going to pay this and what's happening with this and is it me and like if I done something wrong. So I had a lot of that. And then what ended up happening was I just said to the investor, listen, either sign the paperwork so I can issue you the shares or take this offer that I have. And it was probably I had to really push for him to take the offer, and he ended up taking it. And then I had to borrow money from whoever I could to buy him out. And then that meant that I had no money to put into the business. I had no income, and I now needed to pay a loan off. So immediately started hustling, trying to, do side jobs, do little things here and there to try and sort that out. But that just put more pressure on me. And then it was more like, what am I doing? Is this the right thing? Am I going to fail? Is this going to work? Is this product even really good? So I went down that, and that was kind of my year last year. And that's why I ended up at the end of the year just being like, I can't do this anymore. I need to look for a job. So that was the situation.
Well, I wanted to say, Gill, that like from what I've seen, your products are incredible, beautiful, very, very high skill level. These things are really, really globally competitive products. So, I want to commend you for that. You're looking for that outlet to get that to market, get that out there. So just keep fighting for that. That is definitely something that you are made to do. And I can see that that's something that you're never going to stop. You're going to keep fighting to get those things out there. And I believe you've had some really great feedback here in the US recently. Tell us a bit about how Petite French's brand is doing and what's going on there today.
Yeah, so I recently got to spend 5 weeks in the States. I managed to set up an American company, and I've opened a local bank account. And I did a week in New York and the rest of my time in LA. And I visited every single pet store I could find in New York and every single pet store I could find in LA, and had just incredible feedback. I managed to get into a store in the Hamptons and one in New York, very high-end store, and people just loved the product. So it was a really good trip. I'm now in the process of raising investment. So looking to raise investors this side with the idea of exporting there, and chatting to someone there who's an amazing, got really good track record of growing brands in the US, who's keen to take me on. So to touch a little bit on your previous question as well, as obviously as entrepreneurs, we just, when the highs are there, there's no better feeling in the world. I recently listened to a podcast that said your time should be divided into 3. One of the parts is really when you're at your lowest low. A part of it is when you're kind of at your medium and things are going okay. And the third is when you really are just having those extreme highs. And she explained it really well. It was actually Emma Greed. And she said, if those fall out of proportion, then you're either too much in your comfort zone and you're not pushing enough, or you need to be rethinking whether what you're doing is the right thing. It's really good advice because, everyone thinks being an entrepreneur is fun and easy, and it is. It's freaking, we wouldn't be doing it if we didn't love it and we didn't have a passion for it. But I think just understanding that, as much as there's challenges, there's also these like amazing, joyous moments that make it all worthwhile.
Well, on that, Jill, I just want to wish you all the best. I'm looking forward to seeing your brand here in the US. I'm going to be going out to my local pet store soon. I'm going to have to get a dog first. I just understand I need to get a French bulldog. Or what's your Frenchie's? What brand is that? His brand.
Yeah.
French bulldogs. Okay, gonna have to get one of those and get some of your beautiful products. And join the fan club. I definitely think your fan base is going to continue to grow. And really, I wish you all the best for it. Congrats.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is an entrepreneur with extreme bravery and courage. And I really look forward to seeing what Jill does in future. Watch the space. It's going to be really, really exciting. So these are our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube, and of course, on Spotify. Please come and support us there, like, subscribe. And if you want to nominate somebody who you think should be a Silicon Springbok. See you on the next episode.